Okay, so you're here because you want to get straight to the point, cut through the noise.
Right. Exactly. No time to waste.
Well, today we're really focusing in, laser focused on something affecting everyone, rising global temperatures.
Mhm.
We got this recent Earth Talk episode you sent over, and, well, our goal here is to really pull it apart.
Dig into it.
Yeah, extract the key stuff, the data, what's
Yeah.
actually driving this warming and, why it matters so much, all based on what they discussed.
We'll be looking at the science, the potential impacts, and maybe some actions too, all from that source.
Perfect. So let's dive in.
Okay, so first off, what really jumps out from the Earth Talk material is how present this all is.
Right, not some far-off problem.
Not at all. They make it clear rising temperatures are happening now. You're probably feeling it, the hotter summers, maybe milder winters, and the weather just seems
Less predictable.
exactly, just
Well,
sort of all over the place sometimes.
absolutely. And the data, which Earth Talk mentioned comes from NASA, well, it paints a really stark picture of that reality.
Stark is a good word.
These last 10 years, they weren't just a bit warm. They're the warmest decade we have on record. That's a serious climb.
A sustained one. And to really put a finer point on it, the Earth Talk source flagged something pretty specific and maybe a bit alarming.
Okay.
We've actually seen months in the past year where the global average temperature went over 1.5 degrees Celsius above what they call pre-industrial level.
Right. Pre-industrial. That's basically before we started burning fossil fuels on a massive scale, like late 1800s.
Precisely. And that 1.5-degree number, it isn't just random. It's this threshold climate scientists have pointed to for a long time, kind of warning sign.
Okay, yeah, that 1.5C threshold, and it keeps popping up. So why is that number the big deal? What makes it so critical, according to Earth Talk?
Well, crossing it, especially consistently, really ups the ante. It increases the risk significantly of triggering, well, changes we can't easily walk back. Irreversible shifts. Tipping points.
Exactly, tipping points. The Earth Talk material mentions some key ones. Think melting permafrost.
Which releases more greenhouse gases, right? A feedback loop.
You got it. A dangerous feedback loop. And then there's the big ice sheets, like Greenland or Antarctica. Destabilizing those could mean really dramatic sea level rise.
Wow.
And another big one they probably mentioned is coral reefs dying off. They're vital, like nurseries for ocean life. Widespread death there is. It's catastrophic for marine ecosystems.
So these aren't just isolated things, they ripple outwards.
They absolutely do. They're all interconnected with global consequences.
Okay, so temperature's rising, we're seeing these risks, but let's back up a bit. What's the basic engine driving this whole thing, the fundamental cause? Earth Talk touched on it, but let's nail it down.
Right. The core mechanism, as the podcast explained, is basically cranking up Earth's natural greenhouse effect.
And it's worth remembering that effect itself isn't bad, right? We need it. Oh, absolutely essential. Without it, Earth will be, well, freezing. These gases, CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, they naturally trap some sun's heat, keep things livable.
So the problem isn't the effect itself, but how we're messing with the dials, so to speak,
Yeah.
amplifying it.
Precisely. Human activities are pumping up the volume. The Earth Talk source pointed squarely at burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas for energy and transport.
Yeah.
Plus, things like cutting down forests on a huge scale, deforestation, and modern industrial farming.
And those all release massive amounts of these greenhouse gases.
Huge amounts, way more than the planet can naturally soak up. And it's interesting, CO2 gets the headlines, but methane, lots from agriculture, like livestock, is actually much more potent at trapping heat in the short term.
That thicker blanket analogy, Earth Talk, it really works, doesn't it? All these extra gases thicken that atmospheric layer.
Then trap more heat. Simple as that. It warms everything up. And the really sobering part, which I think Earth Talk mentioned, is how long some of this stuff sticks around. CO2 can stay in the atmosphere for hundreds of years.
Hundreds. Wow.
Yeah. So the emissions we release today, that's like taking out a really long-term climate loan that future generations will have to deal with. It's a heavy thought.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, so the blanket's thicker, the planet's heating up, but what does that look like on the ground right now? What tangible stuff did Earth Talk point to?
Well, they gave some pretty vivid examples. Think about those extreme heat waves in Europe. We're talking temperatures over 40 Celsius, that's over 104 Fahrenheit, in places that just weren't built for it.
That's not just uncomfortable, that's dangerous.
Extremely dangerous. It puts huge stress on people's health, especially older folks or those with existing conditions, major public health risks.
And the wildfires. That was another huge point they likely made. It feels like we see more and more about those.
Definitely. And it's not just the flames themselves, devastating as they are. Earth Talk probably talked about the scale. Whole towns gone, huge areas of forest burning.
And the smoke, too, right? That travels for miles.
Exactly. Massive air quality problems, respiratory issues, adding to the danger from the heat itself. It's all interconnected.
Okay, shifting slightly. Earth Talk also got into something really basic. Food. Our food supply.
Yeah, this is critical. Rising temperatures hit agriculture hard. The podcast likely explained how staple crops, think wheat, corn, rice, are really sensitive.
Sensitive how?
Well, high temperatures, especially at the wrong time in their growing cycle, can slash yields. Even just a couple of degrees difference can matter a lot.
And lower yields. That means less food, higher prices.
Bingo. It can lead straight to food shortages, price spikes, and as Earth Talk probably suggested, that can even fuel social unrest or political instability in some regions. It shows how climate isn't just an environmental issue, it's, well, everything.
Economic, social, political.
All of it. And we can't forget the oceans. Earth Talk would have definitely covered this. They've been acting like a giant heat sink.
Absorbing most of the extra heat.
An incredible amount, yeah. Something like 90% of the extra heat trapped by those greenhouse gases, which, has actually slowed down how fast the air temperature is rising.
But that comes at a cost to the oceans themselves.
A huge cost. It leads directly to things like coral bleaching. Warmer water stresses the corals. They expel the algae that give them color and food.
And to basically starve.
Yeah.
Wiping out those reef ecosystems.
Which are crucial habitats. It disrupts the whole marine food web. Plus, warmer oceans fuel stronger hurricanes and, critically, contribute to sea level rise as the water expands and glaciers melt. Coastal communities are already feeling that.
It's a pretty grim picture when you lay it all out. Yeah. But okay, Earth Talk didn't just stop at the problems, did they? They talked about solutions, actions.
No, they definitely moved on to that, which is crucial. The main thrust, based on the source, is we have to slash greenhouse gas emissions drastically, across the board.
And how do we do that? What are the big levers?
Well, a huge one is energy. Transitioning away from fossil fuels to renewables, like solar and wind power, that's key. Plus, becoming much more efficient with the energy we do use.
Using less, basically.
Right, and phasing out coal and oil has to be part of that mix. It's unavoidable, according to the science they presented.
And it's not just the power plants, right? What about, individual choices? Did Earth Talk get into that, how we get around?
Oh, yeah. Transport's a big piece of the puzzle. The podcast likely suggested things we can actually do, like driving less, flying less, if possible.
Using public transport more. Or switching to EVs.
Exactly. Electric vehicles, public transit, even just carpooling or biking for shorter trips. It all adds up.
They probably also mentioned food choices, which might surprise some people.
It's an interesting link. Earth Talk likely pointed out that raising livestock, especially cattle, produces a lot of methane, that potent greenhouse gas we mentioned. So shifting towards more plant-based foods, even just eating less meat, can actually make a noticeable difference to your personal carbon footprint.
And beyond individual actions, I bet Earth Talk stressed the political angle, too, using our voices.
Absolutely. Because while individual steps matter, we need bigger systemic changes. The podcast likely emphasized voting for leaders who take climate seriously, supporting policies that push for clean energy, regulate emissions, that kind of thing.
Connecting personal choices to the bigger picture.
Exactly. You need both. Individual action and systemic change driven by policy.
Did Earth talk about local stuff, too? Community-level action? That always feels a bit more hopeful, maybe more achievable.
Yeah, that's important too. Local action can be really powerful. The source might have mentioned things like creating more green spaces in cities, community gardens, maybe supporting local clean energy projects, tangible things people can get involved in.
And simple things at home. I assume they covered that as well.
For sure. Practical steps like making sure your home is well insulated so you're not wasting energy on heating or cooling, using smart thermostats, switching to LED light bulbs, little things, but they add up when lots of people do them.
Makes sense. And finally, I'm guessing education and just talking about this stuff was part of their message.
Definitely. Knowledge is power, right? Understanding the problem, talking about it, sharing information. Earth Talk likely highlighted that as fundamental. It helps raise awareness, encourages people to make better choices, and build support for those bigger changes.
So wrapping this up, this whole deep dive into the Earth Talk material really hammers home that rising temperatures aren't some abstract future issue. They're here now, with real consequences.
It's the present reality, but, and this is important, the podcast also seemed to suggest strongly that it's not too late to act. Meaningful action is still possible.
Right. Which leaves you, the listener, with something to think about, maybe. We've talked about this complex web environment, society, economy, health, all tangled together by rising temperatures.
So the question really is, how does all this information from Earth Talk, as we've discussed it, sit with your own understanding of the world? What does it make you think about? Or what else do you feel you need to explore now?